my name is Colton Nevis, and before I go into the whole company intro, the real reason why I'm here is that I deeply care about education and those who play a role in it. So my first thing is thank you to everyone who is on the call today. I'm a first generation college student from a single parent low income family, and the only reason why I'm here is because I had educators who engaged me in my education, like practitioners across the screen for me today. An important point, all of that wasn't done with technology. It was done in the class, face to face, person to person. And so technology is great for scaling that experience, particularly in the world we find ourselves in today. But just again, this is about you guys. So thank you very much for joining. At Sophia, I am a designer and learner researcher. And all that means is I get to the delightful responsibility to talk to learners, K-12, college, post-grad, lifelong learners, K to grade, the whole spectrum, to understand their habits and challenges and obstacles and anxieties around online learning, and then using that to hopefully make more engaging tools for students as they engage on those journeys. So today's session is about taking information from those interviews, presenting them to the people here, and we'll have a breakout session midway. As everyone here knows, I don't need to pound the drum here, but we're in sort of a new Wild West a scenario here. So we are going to co-create a sort of collaborative basket of documents and resources to go on off and face fall 2020 chins high, faces forward. So without further ado, we're going to jump right in and talk about some of the feedback I got for spring 2020 as we dive into engaging students. So as I was discussing, I interviewed people, and when I talked about spring 2020, right, it's deeply engaging, so connecting, laughter, hugs, face-to-face office hours. And actually, that was 2019. Those were from last year, as you all know. The challenges that face us are pretty distinct, and everyone is coming together to help learners still achieve their objectives. So I don't need to review the litany of massive changes that took place in a very truncated timeline, but suffice to say our worlds are turned upside down, and that we have an opportunity, a chance, a responsibility to rise to that occasion. So I'm actually going to real talk, spill the tea about spring 2020 by having us go through a game that's on Sophia's platform. And I'm going to have us access that through the chat here. And so give me a second while I get that in here. And this is like it says in the description, we'll have a coffee on Sophia for the winners here, but this will be our way of kind of engaging with some of the facts and figures that came out of spring 2020. So this link will take you to a page with some other jazzy music. You can turn that off in the top right-hand corner with a musical note. And you can jump right in. Basically, a Pictionary-esque carding. Well, we won't be drawing, but jump right in. It'll auto-create a name for you. You can change the emoji, change your name, and it'll start when we have at least 12 people in the room. So actually, round one has already started for some people here. You can feel free to write things into the chat here, but you just enter in your answer on the right. Oh, EMW already getting it right. So you can imagine, oh wow, one person got it. Apologies for mine. But we're gonna go through it. There's about 10 cards here. Keep on playing. I'm gonna be white noise in the background. But the flashcards that you see here were made by individuals who had looked up facts and figures about the education and engagement environment in spring 2020. Whoever EMW is in my group is really smashing it right now. Let's see. So as you're playing, when students bring things to Sophia, they bring videos, PDFs, any kind of content, they'll consume it and create flashcards as they usually do, learning any topic. And then they can just automatically choose flashcards to throw into games like this as a way to engage with their peers immediately with very little work online. Okay, that one was purposefully hard, sorry. All right, so on the winner screen, don't click away from it. Just want to make sure that whoever EMW has really crushed everyone else. But if you could, in the Zoom chat, and if you feel comfortable with it, like we promised, like there'd be a prize, so we'd want to pay for a coffee for you. Let us know if you won here in the Zoom chat. And you can chat me privately and send me your email. That would be great. Okay, I will just say Erin Wilson, she was in my group. She beat everyone by double amount, so she crushed it. All right, so these flashcard games happen automatically, right? Students, whenever they're studying content, they are breaking it down into likely flashcards or some other way to recall that information. And Sophia, as we think about how to engage people beyond the screen with each other, this can happen really automatically. So you choose which flashcards you want to go into this game, throw it into it, and then you can play with others within your class or sort of beyond those walls. All right, so congratulations to everyone who won. But the challenge, as we all know, and every session around here is talking about it, really the real losers, unfortunately, are kind of the learners of 2020. And the challenge that stands before us is really how do we bring all that magic that all of you guys have done, everyone I'm talking to has brought to the classroom. How do we translate that to the digital experience? It's a question in all of our minds, right? And for engagement, as we're talking about this, the realities of this upcoming fall 2020, present a number of complex challenges. And everyone here believes engagement is a necessary part of that solution. But really, what is engagement? And so like, if you could just either type in to your notes or write down for the next 30 seconds, just like words that describe engagement to you in the classroom or in any learning experience. Doesn't have to be about the game. But while you're doing that, when I've stood in front of a classroom or in front of a group of people to to teach, really I look for smiles, I look for questions, I look for note-taking, nodding, eye contact. These are, physical symbols that let me know that students are, at the very least, connected to what I am saying and consuming that knowledge. So we've got like keeping my intention, intentional connection, interaction. Yes, absolutely. This list is going to be long and broad, which is what I'm really hoping for. Right, and in this engaged classroom, right, not everyone's going to be engaged with every strategy, and so it's important, as you all know, to employ various strategies to capture the students behind the scenes. And so what we're going to see here is that just looking at the Zoom chat, we've got engagement means so much to so many people, and it's hard to kind of define because it's a real big, broad definition, but it's real easy to see when you're standing there in front of others and discussing. Right, building community, definitely, Dipali, and contributions, Michelle. Now, here's the challenge, as we all know, right, is that engagement right now looks a little bit like this. What happens when you can't see them, both visually and virtually? When we can't see their faces, we can't know if they're watching our lectures or our videos or engaging with what we put onto Canvas or Moodle or Blackboard, right? That narrows our ability to get feedback from all of these really awesome ways, eye contact, questions, engagement, to a very narrow set of feedback mechanisms, tests, quizzes, assignments. And so in today's learning environment for everyone, engagement is really hard to define, but it's also so hard to see, which is what makes it really difficult today. And for all of us here, we kind of have our work cut out for us, not just individually, but collectively. Because just like this learner here in the bottom left-hand corner, who maybe isn't jiving with the story I'm telling her or the interactive game I brought to the classroom, I need to reach out and make sure that she's also learning, right? And so when we see these screens that are black and have names, it's hard to see beyond them, to see the tired, dejected, disconnected, demoralized. learners behind those screens. So they need ideas from all of us, everything we can try all together. And it brings me to like a favorite cartoon of mine when I was growing up, Captain Planet. And if no one's seen them here, these people at the bottom are Planeteers, and they have these rings that, when used in concert, bring forth Captain Planet to help save the day. And so in the same way, all of us are really trying to solve this problem. How do we engage learners? Because we know that that helps learners achieve their objectives. So educators, technology, and technologists, learners, and companies. And I have some feedback here from Sean Clark. Went to the game, couldn't get a username posted, and only had my voice. I apologize, Sean. And this is something that we want to work through. But if you would be okay with this, I'll message you directly so we can try it out together afterwards. But in terms of the next step here, I would like us to think about, oops, here, what happens when our powers combine. So today's session is really, it is about cool Sophia's game. That's interesting. It's a way to engage with students. But honestly, we're kind of staring at a wild, wild west situation here. And we have sort of limited tools that Sophia has been thinking about, but we know that you have so many more challenges, answers, and thoughts to bring to the table here. So we are going to engage in sort of a brainstorming challenge to think about, one, some of the challenges that we saw students facing. How might we encourage collaborative learning? How might we deepen connections between learners and educators? And how might we increase peer-to-peer interaction? These are themes that have come up in my interviews with students, themes that have come up with various articles online. And the challenge is that we have limited means to achieve those challenges: video, chat, asynchronous methods like documents and PDFs. So we're just going to go into quick breakout rooms for the next 15 minutes. And the challenge, I've assigned each group. So each Sophia person will have a challenge and a modality, a medium, and that will be the constraints around which we'll build possible ways to engage students as we move into fall 2020. So that's the ask here, is how can we make this engaging for students? So we'll go into Zoom breakout rooms, review our solutions that we've used for these challenges in the past, and then think really about how do we deliver those in this very narrow medium that will come with the challenge. And so take inspiration by one of my favorite teachers as a kid, Miss Frizzle, and we can be messy and make mistakes here. There's no right answer other than having many answers to bring to the table for the upcoming fall semester. Holden, if you wouldn't mind us to go into those breakout rooms. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to have each of the teams, so the Sophia member, kind of present some of the ideas that were thrown out there. Again, the whole goal is we're going to have a list of all of these things, and it's going to be shared with everyone here in an aggregated resource. Oh, did I not get everyone here? Yes, Barnaby, all of them will be shared. In fact, each team's Google Doc will be shared with everyone here. That way you can kind of go in and hopefully get more ideas. So I was with my team, and then I'll pass the baton actually, so I don't do too much talking. Is there any team, Aisha, Sebastian, Seher, who wants to discuss their challenge and their solution?
Sure, we can kick it off. So our brainstorming team had the challenge of engaging collaborative learning, encouraging collaborative learning using video. And the one thing that came up was we want to be mindful of the fact that in this remote environment, some people don't always necessarily want to be using or have their video on. So it was less about video chatting, and a couple other solutions came up. The first was engaging with, encouraging students to engage with video content through asynchronous annotation. So Brent had pointed out a great tool that he uses called Perusal that lets people have asynchronous annotation and discussion over video content and lectures that he posts. So he's able to promote a good discussion with his students and among his students on the video content that he provides to them. And the second thing that came up was personalized videos for feedback or introduction to engage students. And I think this is something that kind of applies really broadly to a lot of areas that have gone remote now, but education particularly, where it's really easy to write an email or just send a message over to Slack channel or something. But that can be so open to interpretation and misinterpretation. Certainly experienced that a couple times on Slack. And it can be, it's just so much more personal when you take that 30 seconds to record a video and send it over to your students. So those are the two things, using asynchronous annotation and discussion on video content, and just taking a second to send a quick personalized feedback or intro video to students where you can.
Thanks, Ed. Those are really interesting themes that kind of played into some of my group's discussion here. But asynchronous and intro to video. We're excited to share that with everyone else. So that's in your Google Doc, right? Cool.
It is, yes.
Aisha or Seher, would you like to share?
All right, I can jump in. So our challenge with encouraging collaborative learning using chat. So some things that we really discussed were the fact that chats can actually be a place to have a very rich conversation that really encourage peer-to-peer interactions as well. So an interesting point that came out was that, when the chat feature exists, it means that you don't anymore have a single professor. You don't have a single teacher. It means there are a lot more, the peers can also help each other. But the problem is that many times there are too many tools. You've got a Zoom chat or a Teams chat, you've got an email, you've got a Slack, you've got way too many things happening. And students can get confused, so you don't know where they're ending up. Another thing with that, we have to start thinking about ensuring accessibility across platforms. So a lot of the people in our discussion mentioned that often students don't have access to internet, or have to go to a coffee shop to get it. Don't have access to a desktop. So how do we actually ensure that they have accessibility? And importantly, also there are different learning styles. So I think often we forget that, in pushing people to get their ideas out, for introverts, it can just be exhausting. So just things to keep in mind and be really mindful of. Lastly, also with things like Teams and Zoom, there are a lot of functionalities, and perhaps there isn't enough training in place for moderators and other people to be using all those functionalities in the best and most efficient way. So we were just discussing some of the solutions. Perhaps one of them includes being more intentional with using chat and switching it with lectures and how they're managed. Also being more intentional about having a moderator in place so that someone's pulling out what's coming from the chat, and keeping everything that comes from the chat so that it's not lost at the end of a Zoom chat. So making sure that becomes part of the learning and people can take it forward. So that was great as well. That's what we had.
Excellent. Thanks, Seher. And on a side note, Holden, do you mind if we get the chat from this? Just
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Us.
Yep.
Perfect. Aisha.
Great. Hi. Okay. So purple parrots. What we really landed on, and we were talking about increasing peer-to-peer, student-to-student interactions over documents like Word docs, spreadsheets, whiteboard type things, and the difficulties there. One of the most interesting things that came up was how everyone is so used to working synchronously when they're together, right? You meet together, you work on the thing, you collaborate at the same time, and that the instant switch over to being online kind of meant, cool, now we're on this platform like Google Docs where we can work asynchronously but still collaboratively, but we still really want to work synchronously. And that there's some sort of letting go of a habit, like that old nostalgia that everybody talks about to how it used to be in this new world, that needs to be addressed. Because in fact, it's more productive for everybody to work asynchronously online than it is for everyone to get distracted on a Google Docs side chat. Not that that's not fun. So that was a thing that we identified. And then in addition to that, the general need for having organization in different channels to keep our documents together, but accessible and able to be collaborated upon. So Slack and Teams are great because we have all these channels, but files still kind of get lost. And then you have to go digging for them to find them to be able to then synchronously or asynchronously collaborate on them, even though technically that nesting situation is there and we have access to them. And I think what everyone else also lands on is that we have all of these different document-y, PDF-y, annotatable-y tools, but they don't all do everything they need them to do. A really good example is how we're all used to being in Google Drive and Google Docs, and it forces a linear function of thinking. And sometimes whiteboards are needed, and Google's released something called Jamboard recently. There is Miro, there are other whiteboard apps, but they all kind of exist somewhat in silos and they're not together. So you have to do, as Sahar was saying, you have to go platform hunting and hopping.
Which could be a fun game. And when I say fun game, I mean confusing game.
Scavenger hunts can be confusing, right? As long as there's a good treasure at the end.
That's true. That's true. Well, thanks for that. For us, Red Jaguars, we were deepening relationships between students and instructors and educators, purely over chat. So no pictures, no videos, no nothing, just chatting. So this could be text, this could be Zoom chat, this could be Slack, and a number of tools were brought up. And so when we were trying to unpack the challenge, we noticed that many ways that we solve for this in our more sort of traditional classrooms are office hours, lunches, before and after class general discussions, getting to know people beyond their kind of function in the classroom, so future goals, extracurriculars, hobbies, etc. We also were looking at in what other ways do people make these connections online that may or may not be related to education. And so we're thinking about what it's like to be on a Zoom date, for instance, where you've met someone for the first time, or using other tools like VoiceThread came up with asynchronous presentations, Flipgrid, and YellowDig. And next stretches, a very important piece here. So what we tried to do at the end was try to smash together a couple of ideas to go beyond some of the platforms that we've used. And so a couple of ideas, we of course came up with things like discussion forums on Slack, polling in Zoom. So those are things that can be facilitated on chat only. But someone brought up a cool thing from Slack called Donut, which can bring up, which can assign you to lunches or discussions with various other people in your class that can happen on a regular basis. As we brainstormed, here are some of our a couple more crazy ideas. Is YellowDig, which is a place to like pin articles and post questions. So if there's a way to, at the beginning of a semester or at the beginning of a quarter or whatever it may be, posting an article that represents you and everyone commenting on this article. And so having that for the whole class as a way to get to know people beyond, again, their role in the classroom. Just a couple of other ways in which to bridge different platforms to make sure that people feel connected to the people they're speaking to, even though they're not there in person. So all of those things, you notice lots of crazy themes came up, like sometimes there's too many tools, using many tools at once, training people on those tools, asynchronous engagement. All of this, again, comes under that big umbrella of engagement. And today's session was just meant to say, hey, we've got a lot of room to play. And all of us appreciate you bringing some of that to the table today. So I will here's what we are going to do next. So we're running out of time here, but what happens next is we're going to aggregate this. And so we have all of your documents in place. Imagine now, if people read through this and wanted to make flashcards, we could play a game off of what we just made. So just a bit of a closing the loop on that flashcard game at the beginning. And ultimately, we're trying to move, everyone here is doing their best. Like I just, again, want to look each of you in the eye and thank you for what you're doing. And really appreciate the ways that we're trying to adapt old tools, new tools within this new situation to ensure that students remain engaged. So that, I think, is the end of this. We are going to send out the notes to everyone here. And once Holden sends me the chat, we'll be able to reach out to we'll be able to reach out to the winners and hopefully get you that free coffee. Otherwise, thank you for joining us today, and hope to see you at some of the upcoming sessions.